My latest short story collection, an all science fiction short story collection called 101 Things to Do Before You're Downloaded, has just been released by PS Publishing. And not only is there a trade paperback, not only is there an ebook, but there is also a limited jacketed hardcover signed edition for which there will be only 100 copies, though it occurs to me there should really be 101 for a book that's titled 101 Things to Do Before You Download It. And I now, in order to make those signed, limited, jacketed hardcover editions happen, need to sign all of these signature sheets, which will get bound in those books. There are more than 100 of them because, of course, some will be damaged and some will be found illegible, though my handwriting always is illegible anyway. But I thought rather than do it alone, because signing these signature sheets can be a long and lonely job, I've often done it stuck in my room at conventions or sitting in the front row of a panel or while a panel is going on, but I thought I would do it here with you, and we'll see how long this actually takes, and I'll tell some stories about other signings I have done. But first, let's see how bad my handwriting actually is. I'm going to sign my name a couple of times and see how, oh boy, see how illegible these all are. As you can see, they're not the most legible signatures in the world, but that's just the way they are. I've often heard you can tell the difference between the first signature sheet signed and the last signature sheet signed, that the signature has deteriorated, but my handwriting has always been the deteriorated type. I sort of look like a 5-year-old who's just learning cursive and then had his hand broken. I actually did have my hand broken once while I was at Clarion, and anyway, I'm supposed to begin signing these. As you can see, there's a space for my signature, and there's a space where PS Publishing will stamp in the number. Let me sign one of these and we'll see how it looks. Well, there's the first one, and we can compare it with the last one. We'll see how bad these actually get. As I said, my hand actually was broken at one point. I don't think my handwriting is any worse for that. It was when I was at Clarion in 1979. We were playing volleyball. It turned into tackle volleyball. I never really played football when I was in school, even though I was large and I was 6'4". So I did not know how to take a tackle, but when I grabbed that volleyball and started running, another member of my Clarion class, Jerry Robinette, tackled me, and I went down with my hand in front of me and broke 2 of the fingers here. So you think maybe that's why my handwriting is terrible, but no. If you looked at my handwriting from before that time, it would be just as wretched. So we'll see, how are these looking? Well, these are looking okay. This is not the first book that I ended up signing for PS Publishing. Many years ago, back in 2010, they published an all zombie collection called What Will Come After, and they did a limited edition for that as well. I'll show it to you now. Not only was it a limited edition, it was boxed and everything. Look at that, boxed in a nice velvet covered interior case, and you pull this little cord to pull the book out. My mother hated that cover. I loved it though. That's what I would look like when I became a zombie. When I become a zombie in the future, because you know that's what's waiting for us. In any case, that was put out back in 2010 by PS Publishing, who were wise enough or foolish enough to put out 101 Things to Do Before You're Downloaded. An all science fiction collection I mentioned. It's got time travel and spaceships and robots and our post-human descendants, so no fantasy, no horror, no zombies, nothing like that, all SF. The cover, by the way, was done by Chris Kalb, the wonderful art director who I worked with at the Sci-Fi Channel and who designed the Eating the Fantastic logo, the podcast that I do. And I'm very pleased with the cover that he came up with. But look at how beautiful that cover is. Look at how beautiful that cover is. I think it encapsulates the wonderful future that is in store for us, that I hope is in store for us. I told him I wanted to look like an advice book that had been dropped in our laps from 100 years in the future to give us advice on how to survive. The subtitle of the book is about other advice from the day after tomorrow, and I think he's managed to pull that off. As I said, this isn't the first signed book I've done. I've had to sign hundreds of these over the years. And I believe the first time I ever had to do this was for a collection edited by Dennis Etchison called Meta Horror. It was a paperback published by Del Abyss. And there was a sale I was so pleased by. I actually cried when I made that sale. To be recognized by Dennis Etchison was a wonderful thing. I was in the slush. Basically, when he accepted the story, he wrote that I give them faith in the slush pile, that he was actually able to find something that he thought was wonderful. Little did I know that my story about the horrors of the blacklist, no other editor than Dennis Etchison would have been as perfect for. So I was very pleased that he took that story. It was published in 1992 in Meta Horror, and Donald M. Grant did a beautiful limited edition book of it. Here's what the limited edition looked like. It's in a slipcase and everything. And the story behind this, well, it's got wonderful signatures by all sorts of people in here, in the front of the book. As you can see, we've got David Morrell, we've got Peter Straub, we've got Whitley Strieber, Steve Rasnick-Tim, all sorts of other people. I think we have Barry Malzberg and Jack Dannon here as well, Lisa Tuttle, Richard Christian Matheson. You notice this slip of paper that fell out. What the slip of paper says here is that the book was not signed by Joyce Carol Oates. I don't remember exactly why she did not sign this signed limited edition, but as you can see, there is a signature by her here now. And that is because when I was a guest of honor at StokerCon earlier this year, I brought my copy along and got her to sign it. So I may have the only signed copy of Meta Horror that is signed by all of the contributors. My wife tells me I should put a slip of paper in there so that any future owner of the book will understand why the first slip of paper that says there is no signature by Joyce Carol Oates and you do not have a deformed copy is incorrect. But I am very pleased. If there's anyone out there that's gotten Joyce Carol Oates to sign her copy, please let me know. In addition to signing these two books and signing many copies of PS Publishing published a magazine for a while, a hardback signed limited magazine called Postscripts, and Pete Crowther, the perspicacious editor of Postscripts, bought quite a few stories of mine. So I had to sign that along with many other writers, and what he wisely did as he sent around the signature sheets was he divided the authors by their place of origin. So he had one spread, all the US authors, and one spread, all the European authors, and what would happen is you would get your box, sign them, and be instructed to send it to the next person in your country who was to sign the book and pass it on to the next person until the sheet was filled, and then it would go back to PS Publishing in the UK. and all the European ones stayed in the European side. As far as I know, no box was ever lost. The folks at PS Publishing can contradict me on that, should they so choose. But I think they were lucky. We could just imagine if you had something signed by 19 of 20 authors and then the box was lost and you had to start all over again. I'm not sure how many of these I have to sign because some end up being damaged along the way. So they do an overage. Oh, one thing I should mention about me and Carl Edward Wagner. Carl Edward Wagner is also in that meta-horror book. And Dennis Etchison brought the signing sheets to a StokerCon that year so they could then be forwarded to Donald Grant for that copy of the book. I guess he figured there were half a dozen of us there at the convention and he could get all the signings done rather than shipping things from place to place. And because of the size of the book and because of the size of the signing spread, there were two extremely large boxes. And I was given them in the bar by Dennis Etchison, who said, well, when you're done, give them to Carl Edward Wagner. And I went and I signed the first of the two boxes and signed the second of the two boxes, and I tracked down Carl Edward Wagner and said, oh, Dennis wants me to give you these boxes so you could sign the sheets while you're here. And he said, okay. And when I got back to where I told him I would meet him, he was gone. And tracked him down in his room and carrying the large box, and he said, I thought you were kidding. I can't believe Dennis would want me to do that at the convention. Carl had better things to do, and I very nervously handed the one box and said, I gotta go get the second box. Carl was not happy about that. I'll mention one other signed book I was in, which was unique. It was a short story anthology put together to raise money for Charles M. Grant's medical bills. He was not doing well. He was on oxygen near the end, and a whole bunch of us donated stories. In my memory, they were donated, I believe. I believe we eschewed payment so that funds could go to Charlie to help pay for his medical bills, and that was called Quietly Now. It was edited by Keelan Patrick Burke, and it has stories in here by Joe Lansdale, Stephen King, Peter Straub, a whole bunch of other people. F. Paul Wilson, Gayne Wilson is in here, Kim Newman, Doug Winter. And there is one sad aspect to this book. When I was sent the signing sheet, my name is in here. I was sent the signing sheet. There is a blank space where William Relling Jr.'s name was supposed to be because he passed away under rather unfortunate circumstances between selling the story and publishing of this book. This is the oldest, I think. No, Meta-Horror was the oldest, but this one was signed in 2004, so 21 years ago, and that's what my handwriting, that's what my signature looked like back then. So you can see, that's what Scott Edelman looked like back then, and let's see again what this is what Scott Edelman looks like now. Is there much of a change? I don't think there's much of a change. I am just deteriorating and deteriorating. Or maybe not deteriorating. I think all my deterioration happened when I learned how to write when I was a teenager. In any case, I think that's all I have to say about previous limited editions. So why don't we just zip through that? Through the miracle of video we will speed up so you don't have to spend another 10 minutes listening, because I don't believe I've actually gotten halfway through yet. So let's do some time traveling, shall we? And there you have it, the last of the signing sheets for the limited jacketed hardcover edition of 101 Things to Do Before You Download It, of which maybe there should be 101. Well, here they all are. And let's see, this is the first one, this is the last one. I don't think my handwriting is deteriorated. It was deteriorated from the very beginning. So, if you choose to be a super Scott Edelman fan and buy a copy, don't look at it and say, oh, this must be one he signed when he was very tired. They all look like I'm very tired. But here we go. Here are all the sheets. They'll be going back to the UK to PS Publishing so they can be inserted into the special limited edition of 101 Things to Do Before You Download It. So please buy one if you're so inclined, or the trade paperback, or the ebook, whichever is the method you choose to read about the future I have presented to you. 13 stories from the day after tomorrow. Thank you very much for supporting this writer.